Next up, we have a very interesting talk. In fact, the title itself is very interesting, From Valmiki to Covey, Personal Traits by Mr.Dhushyanth Sridhar. So, may I request A.M. Rajshekhar of Trichy to escort Mr. Dhushyanth Sridhar onto the dais. Thank you, Mr. Rajshekhar. I have a very interesting profile that I need to spend a minute reading. Dhushyanth Sridhar is a perfect combination of the ancient and the new modern. So he is a alumnus of BITS Pilani, and he works in an IT company, IT major. He's also a student of Sri Ahobila Mutt. He is a scholar well versed in Ramayanam, Puranam, Mahabharatam, Vishnu Sahasranam and whatnot. He is a very popular personality on the televisions. I'm sure you've seen him in a variety of either Vijay, Jaya, Mega TV. He rendered over 1,500 discourses in the form of Upanyasam, Harikathas and various sorts, presentations. He is also on YouTube. You can YouTube him. He has over 3,000 plus subscribers. 350 videos and 250 hours plus of his discourses are available on YouTube. Has released over 17 DVDs. He's a Vedantic scholar. He runs a charitable trust called Desika Daya, which carries out renovation and maintenance of shrines, organizes heritage visits. So he is the best of both worlds, both the modern and the old. So over to you, Dhushyanth.
Thank you. Is this audible? Yeah. A very good morning to all of you. It's customary for me to begin any lecture with a verse. So I would begin with a verse and then take over to the lecture. Lakshmi netrotpala shrihi satata parichaya desha sambardhyamanaha nabhi nalika rinkan madhukara patali datta hastavalambaha asmakam sampadogan avirala tulasi dhamasan jata bhuma kalindi kantihari kalayatu vapushaha kalima kaitabharehe. I'll tell you the meaning of this verse in the due course. Before I could start the lecture, we are in one of the most ancient yet smart city. It is called Mamallapuram or Mahabalipuram. Interestingly, you will be surprised to know when I use the word city for this little town, if you would Google it, Wikipedia would say it's after all a town panchayat or a town. And how could I call it a city? Because in ancient days, the word Puram historically was added to a place which will suffice or satisfy certain criterion. So it should have good drainage system, it should have good roads, then only they would use the suffix Puram. So Maamallapuram is one of those ancient cities of the 1st and the 2nd century. We are talking 1,800 years before what we are today. So in 2013 I had been to Melbourne to give lectures, and after my lectures were over, they said, why don't you just come along with us and take a tour of the city. So I just went along with the organizers, and they showed me a beautiful building, very beautiful. They said, you know, this is 40 years old. And I was not in an element of surprise because my grandmother's house is over 100 years in India. So anything which is like 40 years was, so here we are talking about a city which is over 1,800 years old. So we had Pallavas who ruled it. So Mallapuram. Mallas are wrestlers. So Mallas are great wrestlers. So great wrestlers lived in the city. So that's one explanation. And since they used to sacrifice their entire lives to protect this city, it was called Mahabalipuram. And you have those ancient sculptures and art of the Pallava period. You had Narendra, Narasimhavarman, Mahendravarman, great kings who ruled this particular city. So if you have time and if you're from anywhere outside Tamil Nadu, I'm sure you would like to take a tour of this beautiful city in the state of Tamil Nadu. And you had great Sanskrit plays of those days called Mattavilasa Prahasanam from this city. A beautiful city, take a tour of the city. Now, when you have a topic like Valmiki to Covey or things like that, is it to say that Valmiki was much smarter or smarter to Covey, or is it to say that Stephen Covey has copied from Valmiki? Nothing of that sort. Both of them great in their own aspects. But what we need to understand is principles can never be let as theories. They need to have examples, illustrations and anecdotes that have matched with us, they have fit inside our culture. So it is for that reason, I'm sure a lot of you, how many of you have had the opportunity to or made time to go through this beautiful good book of Stephen Covey called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People? Okay, how many of you have heard of it? Okay, let me put the other way. How many of you have not heard of it? Okay, excellent, thanks. You're getting my job much stronger, so I will have more role to play in my talk. So Stephen Covey is of course a great management guru. The world respects him. A lot of the presidents of the US respect him. A beautiful book, an excellent book, a must-read book. It's called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So are these habits meant only for them, or is it meant for even people who want to be highly effective people is also a good question. So it's meant for both the cases. Now when we look at Valmiki, interestingly, we have heard a history about this great poet. He was a person who used to plunder wealth from people who used to walk by in the forest, and later he witnessed a great marketing person called Narada. You know, Narada was one of those early marketing persons. He will keep chanting, you know, brand establishment always comes with taking the name of the brand again and again. So the brand Narayana got so much of use and so much of respect with him uttering it again and again, and him being a marketing person, he would never stay at one place, he would go place to place, and so he was a very good marketing person. So while he was on his mission, he came across this person called Ratnakar who said that I'm going to plunder you. Narada said, I have nothing in me to plunder. He said, whatever little you have will do. Then Narada tried to correct him and started putting him to the path of devotion. So this particular Ratnakar, he sat in penance, and that penance is called Samadhi in yoga. If you've been used to yoga, there are 8 parts to it: Yamam, Niyamam, Asanam, Pranayamam, Pratyaharam, and Samadhi. Samadhi is not the word that we use colloquially in Tamil. Samadhi kattiduven, and the Samadhi. Samadhi is a place where you're taken to a different plane, where you're oblivious or not even aware of what's happening around you. I'm sure a lot of you will be doing prayers every day, but what I've noticed in my household is when people recite something, they're completely aware of what's happening. So they'll say, Vishwam Vishnur Vashatkaraha Bhuta Bhavya Bhavat Prabhu Bhutakrit. So the actions speak different, what they speak is different. So Samadhi is a level where you go to another plane. So the termites around him thought him to be a single object, an insentient object, and termites built an hill around him. So that ant hill in Sanskrit is called Valmikam. Since he arose from the ant hill called Valmikam, this person was later called Valmiki. So this Valmiki gave us this beautiful Ramayana, and we are going to look at this beautiful book of Stephen Covey called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People in comparison, in contrast to characters in Ramayana. Let's see how we can fit them. The first thing, being proactive. That's the first principle what Stephen Covey says, to be proactive. What is proactiveness? Even before we could get inside the definition of what proactiveness is, we'll see this beautiful character sketch of Bharata. Ram had 3 brothers, Bharat, Lakshman and Shatrughna. Bharata is one of the most pitiable characters in Ramayana because he had to bear, or he had to be a victim for no fault of his. His mother was Kaikeyi. in those days, names need not have had the concept of initials. He was not called D. Ram. He was not Dasharath Ram. There was no initial. D. Ram, J. Sita, Janak Sita. This concept of initial did not arise because if your father is Janak and you are a lady, you will be called Janaki. So your name itself has whose daughter you are. If you are Draupadi, you are Drupada's daughter. If you are the son of Dasharath, you are Dasharathi. If you are the daughter of Daksha, you are called Dakshayani. If you belong to a province called Panchalam, you are called Panchali. So, these names were inbuilt. You know, in biology we call binomial nomenclature. For every living thing that you see, there is a name given in biology. It's given by species and gender. So, a cockroach, you know what a cockroach is called? Any guess? Very good. Periplaneta americana. That's the name given to cockroach. So, the name of a cockroach with respect to the species and gender will have where it is coming from or what are its characteristics. If it's phylum, Coelenterata. Let me not get into too much of biology. All that I am trying to say is, in those days, names were given very diligently. So, you had Sita, you had Ram and things like that. So, Kaikeyi belonged to a province called Kekeya. Kekeya was a province in those days that comprised of Afghanistan, today's Afghanistan, Pakistan and parts of Punjab. So, she belonged to that region. She was called Kaikeyi. And her mother was too busy partying, so she could not take care of her daughter. So, she hired a servant maid who could take care of her daughter. And that servant maid was her best friend. She had a hunch at the back. So, she was called Kuni in Tamil, and in Sanskrit she was called Manthara. Interestingly, you know, there is one place called Kanauj in Uttar Pradesh. Kanauj comes from the word Kanya Kubja. The word Kanya Kubja gave rise to Kanauj. Kanya means the virgin, Kubja means one with a hunchback. So, Manthara was essentially a Kanya Kubja, but she did not belong to Uttar Pradesh, but she belonged to Afghanistan. So, she was the servant maid of Kaikeyi. Kaikeyi got married to Dasharath. She came here and she used to love her son Bharat like any other mother does. But she also used to like the son of the co-wife called Kaushalya. Her son was Ram. So, Ram and Bharat, they were not biological exact brothers because they were born to different mothers, but the same father. So, they lived happily, but it so played in Ayodhya Kandam, the second canto, that Dasharath wanted to coronate his son Ram as the heir apparent. So, this was the wildfire that spread and people were happy. Manthara comes inside the city. She sees the entire city in a very good, happy occasion. She then says, what is happening? And then people say, you know, Ram is going to become the heir apparent. So, then she walks up to the room of Kaikeyi and she says, Kaikeyi, hey Mudha, oh you fool, why do you lie on this bed when you know that there is a thunder that is going to strike your life? She says, what thunder is going to strike my life? My house is all thunder proof, lightning proof. What is going to happen? She says, it's Kaushalya's son Ram who's going to be the heir apparent and not your son. She says, I don't see any difference between my son Bharat, nor do I see a difference between Kaushalya's son Ram, because both of them are equal to me. But she says, this is not the way that's going to happen, and it's a beautiful conversation that happens between the two. You know what plot Manthara uses? She says, see, your husband is in charge of the Kosala province with its capital as Ayodhya. Your father is in charge of Kekeya province. Now, we have also got Sita's father who is in charge of Nepal, which is called, in those days Nepal was Janakpuri. So, the entire province of Mithila. That's why you've got a language called Maithili that's spoken in parts of Bihar and Nepal. So, she says these are the provinces. Now, tomorrow if Janak wants to expand his territory, he will have to take some part from his son-in-law, or he may have to take some portion from your father. He will surely not take something from his son-in-law Ram. He will always want to give something to his son-in-law. So he may end up taking some portion from your father, but your father will not allow. He will resist and he will fight with Sita's father. Now if Sita's father is fighting, he has to ally with someone. There should be a coalition. Whom will he go in coalition with? Will he go with his son-in-law? Will his son-in-law support? Kaikeyi said, yes, Ram will support his father-in-law. If Ram supports Sita's father, then your father will lose. So Sigmund Freud said, fathers love their daughters and mothers love their sons. So Kaikeyi loved her father. She thought Ram will do some harm to her father, and she said, okay, I will send Ram to the forest. Done. Now, when she sends Ram, Bharat is in his grandfather's house. He realizes something has happened and he comes back to see his mother a widow. His father is no more. His brother has gone to the forest. At that point in time, we should realize what will be the state of Bharata, because people started cursing him. They said, what kind of a person he is? He is the one who is responsible for Ram's going to the forest. Now Bharat could have said, let them say whatever they want. I have got my seat. Getting a seat these days, when I say the word seat, you know what seat it is. Getting a seat is so tough. So let me sit on the seat and rule happily. Why should I even worry about it? That could have been one option. Second, he could have said, without my permission something was done, so I will commit suicide too. Third, he chose the third proactive path. He said, if this kingdom has to go to Ram and it should not go to me, let me accept it. Accepting one's failures and not cribbing over it is an essential prerequisite to be proactive. If you ask someone, today morning while I was just talking to Sudarshan, I was just asking, there are so many people gathered here. I'm sure you're all slogging and you're working, but there's something called as a passion. So if I ask for someone what your passion is, you know, even in interviews, when we give lectures for the college students how to attend interviews, we ask them, what are your hobbies? They'll say, watching movies. Watching movies is not a hobby. Hobby is something where you pursue your passion along with your profession. Watching movies can just be something to while away one's time, but that can never be one's passion or hobby. So when we ask, people say we don't have time. So cribbing about not having time is also pulling one out of being proactive. So always avoiding oneself to crib, not to crib about what failures one has, is an essential component to be proactive. Bharata was very proactive. He knew that there were some failures and he had to make it up. The second most important principle that comes, begin with the end in mind. That's the second very, very important principle. Begin with the end in mind. What is end? I realize that I have to be somewhere. That I have to be somewhere should be a place which is of bliss and not happiness. You know, there is a difference between bliss and happiness. Essentially, Sanskrit gives this. You know, in Sanskrit, there's a very, very beautiful way of getting words done. You know what is the tooth referred to as? Pallu. Danta. Very good. Anybody else? It's called Dvijaha in Sanskrit, the teeth. You know how interestingly it has come? Anything which is born twice is called Dvijaha. If you go by science, your teeth comes as milk teeth, it falls, again you get permanent teeth. So it's called Dvijaha. Even the bird is called Dvijaha in Sanskrit because as per our science, birds, most of them are oviparous. They come from the mothers as eggs, and from the eggs come the chicks. So it's a two-stage birth. So it's called Dvijaha. You know what rice is called in Sanskrit? Sadam enne? Anna. Annam. You know why Annam is called Annam? Aticha Atyacha. If you eat it in limits, you can consume it. If you cross the limit, that will consume you. That is why it is called Annam. Aticha Atyacha. Okay, let me give you some message that you can take back home. I think most of your wives will be at home or your husbands, whichever way. So, you know, what's a sister-in-law called? This will be very interesting if you're going to take this home. You know what's a sister-in-law called? Tamil enna? Nathanar. Kannadadavaru idara illi? Nadni anta heltivi. Okay. Hindi mein kya bolte hain usko? Nanand. In Sanskrit she is called Nananda. You know why she is called Nananda, the sister-in-law? Na ananda iti. Whatever you do, she is never happy. See. Oh well, something brings you laughter. Thanks. Okay. You know, when you speak of domestic things is when people connect. All this while I was talking about Ramayana, people were feeling a bit of the utopia, the no man's land. And now when you get back to the sister-in-law and the mother-in-law concept, everybody has realized it. So it's here. So every word has a derivation. The second principle that we are going to look out is begin with the end in mind. What is end? End is your vision. In management, we are very intelligent and we are very articulate. Because when I used to take management lectures in business schools, I used to tell them, you've paid so much of fees and the books are excellent. But management is all about articulating the way you want it. Vision, mission, goal, objective. Essentially all look the same. But then when you get inside it, there will be a 1-mark question in an MBA. Vision is outside in, mission is inside out. Goal is this, objective is this, but all look the same. So it's the way you articulate. So end here is the way we articulate. End is about what you want to be. There were 2 important characters who recognize themselves what they want to be at the very start. That's very important because it's very customary in schools. The first day all children are gathered. Good morning students, good morning miss. Okay, well, you tell me what's your name and what you want to be. The child is in first standard and the child will say, I want to be an engineer. I am one from Pilani and I have not understood what I am till now. So, in the standard 1, the child says, I want to be an engineer. The child 2 knows that there's something called engineer now. I also want to be an engineer, miss. So, now it comes. Now the teacher says, say something else. And the 10th child will say, I want to become a doctor, for he visited one yesterday. So, this is not one's vision. Vision comes with where I stand, where my talents are and where I need to channelize my talents. That is for profession. But when it comes to life, it's all about what kind of a human being you want to be recognized as. That is where Lakshman and Shatrughna come into picture. You know, when the Payasam, you've heard of this, right? Dasharatha Chakravarti wanted a son. When I said this in one of the lectures, one lady got up. Modi says, Beti Bachao, Beti Padao, and you're saying he wanted a son. I said he already had a daughter called Shanta. He got her married. Now he wanted a son. Are you happy now? So she sat down. So he had a daughter before. So he wanted a son. So he performed a ishti. Ishti in Sanskrit is a kind of a ritual. Since he wanted a son, Putra Kama Ishti, Putra Kameshti. So he performed, and then a person arose from the fire with payasam. With payasam is kheer in a beautiful golden vessel with a silver lid. Says Ramayanam. You know, Ramayana is very, very, very intuitive. The line says, kheer, payasam came in a golden pot with a silver lid. When you read this as a description, you think it's poetic fantasy. Golden pot with a silver lid, good combination, and you go. That's not the way. Kheer came from the fire, so it would have been hot. Gold in science is aurum, AU. Whereas silver is argentum, Ag. Gold has the property of expelling heat. That is why we wear gold ornaments. Our body heat is consumed by the gold and it expels that heat. Whereas silver on the other side has the property to retain heat. That is why in yesterdays, you used to have people eating on silver plates. Even after the rice is served hot, after 10 minutes also it will remain hot because silver has the property to keep that hot. So, silver has the property to retain heat. Gold has the property to expel heat. Queens are very, very comfort friendly. They wouldn't want anything which is too hot, neither too cold. So it was a golden pot with a silver lid to keep the payasam in a lukewarm condition. So the payasam came, and we have got the distribution formula as well. You know, it's very tough to divide a beautiful even number by 3. 100 by 3 is just not possible. You had 3 wives. Interestingly, Dasharatha had many wives, but only 3 names are mentioned here. Somebody asked me, why the other names are not mentioned? See, whatever is irrelevant to the literature, people will not want to mention. What is the use of mentioning the other 347 wives? He had 350 in all. Now somebody asked, how is that possible? He was really smart, he was able to manage all of them. So you had the payasam, assuming it in maths and algebra, you consider that to be 100, you'll have to divide it by 3, and my time is just running. Divided by 3. So divided by 3 gives you 33.3333, which is a non-terminating decimal. So how will he divide the payasam? He was in a fix, because if he would give any share illegally, he will get a legal notice. It was there those days, I am telling you. So he had to be very careful. See, Kaushalya was the first wife. She was the one in the ration book. They didn't have a card. He had 350 wives, right? So ration book. So the first name was Kaushalya Dasharath, and she was the only one entitled as per the government program to get 5 kgs of rice, not the other wives. Oh well, if she were in my state, she would get a grinder too. So the first wife was Kaushalya, and then you have Sumitra, Kaikeyi and other wives. So he had to give legitimate share of 50% of the payasam to Kaushalya. Second, he gave 25% to Sumitra. Don't ask me, where did you get this formula? Valmiki mentions, Ardad Ardham. Ardham is half. Ardad Ardham is half of half, which is 25%. So he gave 25% to Sumitra. Remaining was 25%. Now he did not know what to do with this. He gave Kaikeyi 12.5% of that 25. So which is 50 to Kaushalya, 25 to Sumitra, 12.5 to Kaikeyi. Now one may ask, why was Kaikeyi given this? See, Kaikeyi was very diet conscious. You've heard of people, your children, your wife, your people going to dietitians. He says, you know, in Ayurveda Shastram there's a statement. Eka bhojanam, once a day if you eat, you're a yogi. Twice bhogi, means you enjoy. Thrice rogi, you're to end up with some metformins and some diabetes tablets a day. And the 4th time has not been mentioned. But today, if you interestingly go to a dietitian, they say, don't eat in one slot. Eat it little, many times a day. So when will we do work if we keep eating? So Kaikeyi was very, very diet conscious, so she took 12.5. Interestingly, the remaining 12.5% was again given to Sumitra. Anuchintya Sumitrayai Punareva Mahamatihi. He thought well versed, and then he gave it to Sumitra again. Why? Because Sumitra was a very, very, very understanding and a philosophical wife. Nobody would even quarrel with her. She gave birth to 2 sons, Lakshman and Shatrughna. Both of these people thought of the end in mind. They wanted themselves to be recognized as people who serve, people who volunteer. So Lakshman at the start, from the start, he attached himself to Ram. Shatrughna attached himself to Bharat. Bharat used to serve Ram. Why did Shatrughna attach himself to Bharat and not Ram? Because Shatrughna believed that instead of serving the Lord, it is better to serve the Lord's devotee. So service to mankind is service to God is what Shatrughna thought. So Lakshman served Ram, Shatrughna served Bharat. Interestingly, Vishwamitra was a very controversial person in those days. You know, he used to give statements, media used to be behind him, and whatever he says, that will keep running over and over and over again in the news channels of those days. So Vishwamitra was one such person. So when Vishwamitra came in and said, Dasharath, I need your son Ram. Dasharath said, see, you can ask anything but my Ram, because Ram is my soul. He is my very soul. How can you ask for my son? So finally Vasishta intervened and said, no, it's a very political decision. You'll have to give your son Ram to Vishwamitra. So Ram should have gone with Vishwamitra, but in Ramayana you see Lakshman going along with him. Now comes a very logical question. The person asked for Ram. Why should Lakshman come? You know, this masam called Adi in the Tamil calendar, which is often associated with a month where most of the marriages don't happen. So it is at that point in time where most of the retail shops find it a very good additive, and they start giving something called as a Adi. Oh, everybody is used to it now. Okay, Adi Tallubadi. So you buy one, you get another one free. That's how it is. So in those days also it was something like that. If you ask for Ram, you get Lakshman free. Correct. Now why was this? Because the commentator says, if the body walks, will it leave its shadow? So Ram's shadow was Lakshman. So they were inseparable. So Lakshman wanted himself to be recognized as a volunteer who's inseparable from the person whom he's serving to. Whereas Shatrughna wanted to recognize himself as a volunteer who serves Bharat, but not Bharat who's always with Ram, but who serves Ram from outside. That is why when Ram was walking towards the south, Bharat stayed in a place called Nandigramam outside Ayodhya to serve Ram. So that's how Shatrughna recognized. Beginning with the end in mind is the second principle, where we need to recognize what we want ourselves to be recognized as. So that is the second. Third most important principle is put first things first. First things first is, if we have 10 things in our mind, it is very important to prioritize which takes prominence. Even in mathematics, while probably most of you would have done it, and if you can just rewind your days, in calculus, differential calculus and integration, we have something called as a ILATE, inverse, logarithmic, algebraic, trigonometric, exponential. So to select which one, there is a prominence rule in maths. Select this one as the first one. Likewise, there are 10 activities in a day. It is very, very important to prioritize. Suppose I am going to speak for the day. It is very important what I am going to speak, one, and how I am going to speak. Because communication is a very, very effective tool. In Ramayana, when Hanuman sees Ram for the first time, he says, Sugriva Sachivo Nama Hanuman Nama Vanaraha. He says, I am the secretary to the king called Sugriv. My name is Hanuman, a monkey. Hanuman Nama Vanaraha. This is a statement. Hearing what Hanuman has spoken, Ram turns towards his brother Lakshman and says, what a speaker he is. And he gives 10 verses. Nanrigveda Vinitasya Nayajur Veda Dharinaha Na Samaveda Vidushaha Shakyamevam Prabhashitum Nunam Vyakaranam Kritsnam Manena Bahudhashrutam Bahuvyaharathanena Nakinchit Apashabditam Avistaram Asandigdham Adhritam Avilambitam Urastam Kantakam Vakyam Vartate Madhyamesware. Beautiful verses. If you go through these verses, you wouldn't need a 9999 only 3 days communications crash course. Because he says, Geeti, Shigri, one should never speak so fast that the listener is not able to understand. See, that's generally done purposefully that the person does not ask questions. So, that is Shigri, Shirakkampi. I should speak and you should nod your head. I should not nod my head. You got it? Shirakkampi, wrong. Likhita Patakaha, you should never have anything written and you should speak. Today, I am going to news. So it is very important the way we speak, what we speak. Ramayana is beautiful. Just get into it without any preconceived notions and you will recognize there's so much of management in it. Getting back to the third point, put first things first. Prioritize. Prioritizing is very important. Ram is a befitting example who says how to prioritize. See, why did he prioritize and whom did he prioritize? He felt that he had promised a lot of the common people, Aam Admi. Okay, this word has been used and abused and whatever. So, Aam Admi could mean two things in Hindi. Aam is mango, Aam is common. So, here Aam Admi, the common people always felt that they were tormented by a lot of anti-social elements. So they all requested Ram, Ram, you need to come over to our place. You cannot do everything by remote control from Ayodhya. You need to come to our place and you need to resolve. Ram promised. That is why when his father said, Ram, there is a slight change in the decision. You will not be the heir apparent. You will have to go to the forest. Had it been somebody else in that state, he would have said, I will sue you in the court, tomorrow you come and meet my lawyer. Whereas Ram said, okay, fine, my mission is to annihilate the forces, I will walk. So prioritizing things is very, very important. That is called as put first things first. So we have spoken about 3 principles. The first one, be proactive. Second, very important, always start with the end in your mind. Third, put first things first. These 3 things are coupled in the 7 habits. Out of the 7 habits, the first 3 is coupled in a column called as from dependence to independence. Dependence na Tamil ottara nambi irukradhukku dependence. Independence is to be very independent. Today you hear your daughters and sons say, I want to be independent. This is a statement with no value at all. How can one be independent in this world? Today I am dependent on my car and my car driver to come and pick me up. Today I am dependent on my milkman to give me milk. Today I am dependent on the servant maid to do things, but yet we say I am independent. That's not possible. So independence as per management is not saying with the tinge of arrogance. Independence is all about recognizing what I am. That is called as Atma Sakshatkaram as per Bhagavad Gita. You understand who you are. Onna nee therinjuko. That is called independence in management. So the first 3 principles go from dependence to independence. Now we are going to go to the second category. Next, from independence we need to move to interdependence. Independence is recognizing me alone. Interdependence is to recognize the opposite person also equally and recognizing how we can gel with each other. That is interdependence, which is absent in most of the marriages happening today. I have independence. I recognize me. I recognize myself. I know who I am. But I am not able to take time or make time to understand the other person. That is why you see a lot of friction in the marriages of these days, because independence exists. Interdependence is very, very tough to creep in. So we have got the 4th point, think win-win. That is the 4th principle. Think win-win. Whom do we give example of this? Ram, he had his wife Sita along, and interestingly there was Lakshman. You know, when Ram had to leave Ayodhya along with Sita, Lakshman comes and falls at their feet. Sabhratus charanau gadham nividhya raghunandanaha Sitam uvacha atishayam raghavam cha mahavratam aham sarvam karishyami jagrataha swapataschate. Beautiful statement. Lakshman says, brother Ram, I am not talking to you. I am talking to my sister-in-law Sita. So Ram said, okay, talk to Sita. He asked, Sita, do you know how to cook? Sita said, see, I call people and they come and deliver. So I'm unaware of cooking. So he asks, do you know to wash utensils? She says, I'm very comfortable with a dishwasher. Do you know to wash clothes? She says, no, I love it, but I still can't do it. Whirlpool does that for me. I'm not sure. I'm sorry, I should not include those names which are not in your sponsor list, right? Okay. So she says, you know, washing machine is a great unifying concept. You know why? Because you put everybody's clothes in it. There's a unifying concept and it starts going around. In Tamil, there's a pasuram, Mangak Kadal Kadainda Madhavanai Keshavanai. It starts going around. And when it comes out, they are so united, you'll have to start fighting with it. It reminds you of Mahabharata, Dharma Kshetre, Kurukshetre, Samavedha. So finally, Lakshman asks Sita, Sita, do you know to wash? Do you know to cook? He says, she's very clear. She says, I know nothing of it. He says, don't worry, I will do everything for you. Sita immediately turned towards Ram and said, don't ever leave this offer. If there's somebody who's ready to do everything, will you ever leave this offer? Take him along. So they all lived happily in a place called Nashik Panchavati, which is today's Nasik in Maharashtra. That is when Shurpanaka came. She told Ram, you're very handsome. Ram said, thanks for your compliment. She says, I want to marry you. Ram says, I'm already married. She says, I don't have a problem. And then all those things happened. So then she brings her brothers Khardushan to fight. And finally Ravan comes, abducts Sita. Done. Ram has lost his even his one single wife, because Ram was an exception those days. See, in those days, he used to be in the news. Ram is married only once. You know, all kings used to find he is a big flaw in our entire clan. He has married only once. So he was an exception those days. So then people said, see, he's so incapable. You know, generally there's a healthy competition between Krishna and Ram. Krishna had so many wives. But people say, see, he had so many wives, not even one was kidnapped. Whereas, look at Ram, he had only one, even she was kidnapped. No, this is on a lighter note. Huh? So Sita was abducted. Now Ram comes crying because he has lost his wife. So he comes along with Lakshman, and on the way he finds the vulture king Jatayu, and after that he meets a hermitess called as Shabari. He consumes the fruits what she gives, and then he further goes down to Karnataka in Bellary district in a place called Hampi, which is called Kishkinda, and sees a lot of monkeys there. Surprisingly, by Rashtrakuta Express you go there, you still find a lot of monkeys. Now, there Hanuman sees Ram for the first time, and then he says, Ram, I think I should take you to one person. It's all networking. I'm sure there's a session today, right? Networking. So over tea and coffee. So they said, okay, let's network. I'll take you to one very interesting person called Sugriva. Why interesting person? Because Sugriva was a very political person. He will promise when he wants something, and he will never keep up that promise. So he said, okay, I'll take you to that interesting person. Sugriv, come here. This is Ram. That time Ram says, you know, I've lost my wife, she's kidnapped. Sugriva gives the same pinch. He says, even my wife has been missing. So Ram thinks, see, in coalition, I'll have to exist with such kind of partners who are so feelingless and emotionless. You know, at times coalition gives you such kind of disadvantages. You'll have to agree with such whims and fancies with a broad smile that can be as fake as possible. So Ram said, okay, my wife is missing, so is your wife. Your wife is missing at a place which is known, because Sugriv's elder brother Vali drove his brother Sugriv out of the kingdom by retaining his brother's wife Ruma. So Ram said, strategically you know where your wife is, but my problem is I don't know where my wife is also right now. So let us solve my issue. Sugriv said, nothing like that, you solve mine. So Ram thought, okay, let me solve yours. If I get your wife back, then in other hand, you will have to give me your army in getting my wife back. Sugriv thought, it's a win-win for both of us. I'm going to get my wife back. You're going to get your wife back. That's why he says, Sita kapindraha kshanada charanam rajiva hemojvala nopamani sugriva ramah pranayah prasange vamani netrani samam spuranti. It's a beautiful, it's called, I usually call this as the interval statement of Valmiki Ramayana, because Valmiki Ramayana is like a movie. You need an intermission where you go out, spend 1,000 rupees more than the ticket price and come back, right? That's how an intermission is. So the entire Ramayana is going at one pace. There's an intermission. Where is the intermission? Sugriv says my wife is missing. Ram says my wife is missing. They say we can get our wives back. And in those days, the MOU was signed around the fire. Its memorandum of understanding was around the fire. Jateti vedaha jata vedaha. Fire is called jata vedaha, the one who knows his witnesses. See, if I stand before the fire, I will act as if I'm a good man, but the fire will know, I know who you are. So he's called Jateti Vedaha, Jata Vedaha. So they will go around the fire. So they went around the fire. When they went around the fire, who? Ram and Sugriv, when they went around the fire, Valmiki says, I will give you an interval. He says, he divides the screen into three parts. Center, left, right. Center part is a lady who's crying under a tree's shade. Who is this? Sita, because she's thinking of Ram. Sita, Kapindraha. Kapihi in Sanskrit is monkey. Indraha means Lord. Lord of monkeys is Kapindraha, who is Vali. Kshanad Acharanam, those people who are nocturnal, who work only in the night, they are called nocturnal, Kshanadacharanam. Ravan was a Kshanadachara, even as per Kamban. So three people, Sita, Vali, Ravan. So Sita, Kapindraha, Kshanadacharanam. Rajiva, Hema, Ujjvala, na Upamani. Beautiful line. Upamani means comparison. Sita's eyes were like that of Rajiv. Rajiv is lotus. Hema is gold. You know what What are the other words for gold in Sanskrit? Swarnam, Kanakam, very good. Hema, Hema. Now just now I said Hema is gold, Swarna is gold, Kanaka is gold. Anything else? Huh? Bangaru, Bangaram, yeah, correct. Next. Hatakam is a very beautiful word. See, in Sanskrit, Hatakam is gold. And as per Bhagavatam, it is said that gold exists in the third sphere of the earth. That is why you dig and you take gold. When someone wants to dupe the other, he shows brass, pittal or pittalai as gold, Hatakam. He is cheating. So, pittalai as Hatakam is pittalatam. If you have heard of this word in Tamil. Pittalai, which is brass, is shown as Hatakam, which is gold. Pittala Hatakam. So his eyes, Vali's eyes were like that of gold, and Ravan's eyes were like that of fire. But then Valmiki says, but when Ram signed the MOU with Sugriv, you must have seen when MOUs are signed, your market prices rise, this and all that, right? Likewise here, when they signed the pact, Sugrivaramah pranayah prasange vamani netrani samam spuranti. The left eyes of all these three people winked simultaneously, because we believe in omens that if for a woman the left eye winks, it's a sign of good omen. For the man, it's not good. So for Vali it was bad because Ram would kill Vali. If Vali was killed, killing Ravan was easy, so Ravan's left eye winked. If Ravan were to be killed, Sita will be rescued, so Sita's left eye winked. Vamam in Sanskrit is left. Right hand side is Dakshinam. That is why when you go around in a temple, your right hand side is towards the Lord. That is why you call it as Pradakshinam. Your right hand side is always towards the Lord. Now here, think win-win. So Ram thought, I can get my wife rescued. At the same time, he can get his wife rescued. It's very important professionally and at the same time personally to always think good for people who work with us. It doesn't come with the smile or all the best. I'm sure you will all know this example. When cricketing teams play and at the end of it one team loses and the other team wins, there's a very, very fake gesture of walking and shaking hands with them. Have you ever felt that this is a genuine gesture? It will be with so much of emotions. You are the one who defeated me, so let you rot in hell. I give you a handshake, will be the thought. If someone does it with the best of the thoughts, I think he should have a halo or an aura around his head and he should have a ronak at that point in time. Going to the fifth part, which is a very, very important feature. Seek first to understand and then be understood. It's a very, very important feature. When I say the word speaking or listening, listening you know is different from hearing, where you hear something passionately and it becomes listening. It's a very important skill that most of our children, I'm sure you will have children and some of you prospect grandparents or even grandparents by now. So it is very important to understand how to bring up a child. Today we see that you give your iPad to your child and the child sees what it is and what are the facts. But it is very, very important to listen. Listening is an integral part. When Vibhishan came from Lanka all the way to seek refuge, ask for help, Ram first listened to Vibhishan, listened to Sugriv's opinion and then gave his opinion. So the fifth most important principle is seek first to be understand and then to be understood. Listening is an integral part of any process. Sixth, the most important part is to synergize. Synergizing is a very important concept. How the Setu was built is an excellent feature of 60 verses, how they are built. You must have heard versions where someone touches the rock will start floating. All this has never existed. You must have heard when Lakshman left Sita, he drew what? What did he draw? Lakshman's Rekha. Nobody's Rekha he drew. See, this Lakshman Rekha does not exist in 127 versions of Ramayana. The beauty about Ramayana is what is not there in it is more popular about it rather than what is there in it. So this Lakshman Rekha is useful for one thing. Some may ask for what? To drive away cockroaches. Have you heard of the chalk called Lakshman Rekha? That's the only thing. There's no Lakshman Rekha at all in Ramayana, you can trust me. So the sixth point is synergize. When they had to construct the Setu, it was a very strategic approach because Nala was the only one who had qualified in architecture. So Ram put him as the designer come architect, and then they needed workforce, they put the monkeys, and then he started using various skills in that art. Since my time is running out, I am not able to talk about the Setu construction. There is a beautiful work written 2000 years before in 2500 verses in a language called Prakritam in India called as Setu Bandhana Kavyam. India is rich with literature. We are blessed as a country. Probably our roads could be bad. Garbage clearing is an issue. Pollution is at its peak. We don't know how to put our drainage system to practice. All this needs to be corrected, needs attention, no doubt. Right from the white foam that arises from the Belandur Lake of Bangalore to the cleaning of Ganga and Yamuna, we need a lot. But as a country with culture and literature, we are unsurpassed. We are blessed with the literature. You wouldn't believe, while I was walking in Sydney, there was one foreigner. He looked like a foreigner, like 6.5 feet. He came to me and said, "Are you from India?" I was like, "Yeah, I look Indian." I said, "Yes." "You've put this tea card. Do you speak Sanskrit?" I said, "Yeah, I kind of speak Sanskrit." "Have you heard of this work called as Yadava Bhudayam?" And I was like, "I've heard of it, but I couldn't find a book of it in India." I was like, "Yeah, I've heard of it. Why suddenly?" "Because we were just researching on the book and we thought in our university we could call you." And I was like, "In India, nobody's even researching and you're researching." Why? All that I'm trying to say is we fail to recognize our potential. We undermine our potential. But the other countries respect so much. Another small example that I would like to quote before I come to the last point is, in Indonesia, while I was going for my lectures, there was a driver seated next to me. We were going and it was Jakarta is full of traffic, and he stopped. He took his mat out, he did his namaz and came. And I said, "I'm very happy that you're following your rituals. What's your good name?" I asked. He said, "My name is Aditya." And he said, "Sir, you've been only giving lectures. I'll take you to our city." I said, "Take." He said, "Look at the big mall of Jakarta, the biggest mall." Huh? He said, "Look at the name." And it was called Ayodhya Mall. You know, why I'm telling you this is, culture has crossed boundaries and it is very important to respect. The last point, the last ever point of this lecture, which is sharpen one's saw. To understand one's potentials. So the sixth is synergize, seventh is sharpen the saw. Sharpen the saw is to recognize my physical, mental, social, which is emotional, as well as philosophical status, and to work on it and sharpen it over a period of time. Ram did that. Physically, he walked everywhere to remain fit. Mentally, even after losing his father in his absence, even after having seen his wife being abducted, even after seeing his brother Lakshmana swoon in the war, he had confidence and he moved mentally. Philosophically, he would always stay in touch with people who had reached a certain height. So he would talk to people. Talking and networking is an important feature of a personality, and you see that as a seventh feature. So you've got the 7. Let us just list it down. Be proactive. Then begin with the end in mind. Third, put first things first. Fourth, think win-win. Fifth, seek first to understand and then be understood. Sixth, synergize. Seventh, which is sharpen the saw. These habits of highly effective people, for which we are thankful to Stephen Covey, have been kind of knit with the anecdotes and interspersed with the anecdotes from Ramayana by Valmiki. Many such works could exist. You can compare with many characters whom you find inspiring and take management to a different height where it becomes easy for a listener and a practitioner to practice and live accordingly. Thanks a lot for having spared such a long time.
Thank you, Dhushyanth. Can we have a standing ovation, please? Fantastic. Please stay on, Dhushyanth. May I request Vasu from IFA Galaxy to please come up and do the honors. Dhushyanth, you brought Ram from a deity to a friend of ours. Through your lecture, we recognize Ram now to a closer friend. Thank you so much. Very inspiring.